رئاء الناس. In the word رئاء, how many types of mad were there? And can more than one type of mad actually apply within one word? And if it does, then which length do we apply to that word? That's what we will be talking about in this video, and it's about the rule of the stronger cause of the two mads. So bismillah, let's get into the details. In terms of learning objectives and what you should be able to get out from this video, number one is you should be able to analyze the different reasons for mad that can come in one letter. And number two, you should be able to assess which length of mad should apply to that letter if there is more than one reason for mad. Now the alif in the word ri'a'a, there is more than one reason of mad for this alif. Let's start with the easiest. There is a hamza before the alif, and we previously have said that if there is a hamza before an alif, that is a mad badal, and the mad badal is lengthened to 2 harakat normally. Now at the same time, ri'a'a, after the alif there is a hamza, and when there is a hamza after the alif, that mad is a mad muttasil within the same word, and that we lengthen to 4 or 5. So in the same word there are 2 different reasons: badal, which is 2, and muttasil, which is 4 or 5. So which applies? The short answer is the stronger of the 2 mads and the stronger of the 2 causes of mad applies, and that is muttasil. So we only lengthen it to 4 or 5 in this scenario. Now what do we mean by the stronger of the 2 mads or stronger of the 2 causes of mad? Well, not all mads are created equal. Some are stronger than others. And the rating of the strength of mad is summarized beautifully in a poem by Al-Imam As-Samannudi, where he says, أقوى المدود لازم فما اتصل فعارض فذو انفصال فبدل. Now what do we mean by that? أقوى المدود, the strongest of the mudud is the lazim. Then فما اتصل, i.e. the muttasil, فعارض, عارض للسكون, فذو انفصال, ذو منفصل, فبدل. We have separate videos on each of these types of mad, so if you haven't watched them, go ahead and watch them. I'll put a link to the playlist above. Before we go into this video, because this is about when 2 of these mads come at the same time, what happens. So if we go back to the word ri'a'a, we said there is a muttasil and a badal. And if we go back to the poem, أقوى المدود لازم فما اتصل, فما اتصل, the muttasil is stronger, فعارض فذو انفصال فبدل. Badal is the weaker one. So the muttasil is stronger than the badal, therefore the muttasil applies. In this scenario, ri'a'a can only be read as 4 or 5 harakat when we are continuing. The muttasil is stronger. It does not allow itself to go to 2 harakat like the badal, the weaker of the 2 mads. There are a few combinations that can happen, so we'll mention a few examples and see which is the stronger mad and what length should apply. However, stick to the end. If it's all confusing, at the very end I'll give a very short way and short summary where you can just simplify it for yourself if you forget all the details. That's towards the end of the video. Let's take this word. Amin. That alif. There are 2 different mads or 2 reasons for the mad. Can you guess them? First one, there is a hamza and then followed by a mad, and we define that as a mad badal, and that's 2 harakat. And the same alif is followed by a sukoon, which is an original sukoon, and we define that as a mad lazim, which is 6 harakat. Which length do we apply? Can we say amin? Can we say 2 harakat like a badal, or do we have to make it 6 like we read it? We look back at the ruling of the stronger of the 2 mads. أقوى المدود لازم, that's the stronger of the mads. فما اتصل, فعارض, فذو انفصال, فبدل, the badal is the weaker. So what length can we read? Amin. we can only read that alif as 6 harakat because the lazim is stronger than the badal and it doesn't allow itself to be read as 2 harakat. And here's another one. Here is a munfasil and a badal. So when we read the word وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ, now we're talking about the waw, not the alif. So the alif is a mad muttasil. جاءوا, the alif is followed by hamza. That's a mad muttasil. Now the waw. Let's look at the waw. The waw, before it comes a hamza. So then when there is a hamza followed by a harf mad, that is a mad badal. That is normally 2 harakat. But when we're continuing, وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ, so the waw, أَبَاهُمْ, there is a waw followed by a hamza. And they're in 2 different words. So that is a mad munfasil. And that's normally 4 or 5. So which applies? We've got a mad badal 2 and a mad munfasil 4 or 5. We apply the stronger of the 2 mads, which is the 4 or 5, which is the munfasil. So we read it وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ with 4 or 5 harakat. The badal disappears. It's the weaker of the 2 mads. And that, of course, is when we're continuing the reading in these 2 words. And let's look at a few of the verses of Surah Ar-Rahman. When I'm saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ar-Rahman, علم القرآن خلق الإنسان. Now this gets a bit interesting. علم القرآن خلق الإنسان. Now I read it continuously on purpose. علم القرآن خلق القرآن. Now when I'm reading it continuously like this, what type of mad is there? القرآن, القرآن. There is a hamza followed by an alif. And hamza followed by a harf of mad, and that is a mad of badal. We read that 2 harakat. So if I'm continuing, al-Qur'an 'allama, 2 harakat, mad badal. Now if I'm stopping, 'allama al-Qur'an. Now here, I know there's a mad badal because there's a hamza followed by an alif. We just established that. But I'm stopping now, and then after the alif, there's a sukoon. There is a temporary sukoon. So now this is a mad arid al-sukoon. And we said a mad arid al-sukoon is lengthened how long? We said 2 or 4 or 6. So the stronger of the 2 mads is the mad arid al-sukoon. أقوى المدود لازم فما اتصل فعارض فذو انفصال فبدل. So عارض is stronger than بدل. So we lengthen it to 2 or 4 or 6 because عارض للسكون is stronger. But in my reading, I am reading عارض للسكون as 4 harakat. I'm reading الرحمن علم القرآن 4. So if I'm reading normally عارض للسكون with 4 harakat, then 4 is stronger than 2. I can't go and read Al-Quran as 2 because it's a badal. Because my عارض السكون is 4. So عارض السكون is stronger than badal. So I should read it with 4 harakat in my reading. And if you didn't find any of the previous ones complicated, this last one has a little bit of a twist. So when al-muttasil comes with عارض السكون, so these 2 reasons. In Surah An-Nazi'at, أأنتم أشد خلقا أم السماء بناها. Now the word السماء, if I'm reading continuously and I'm continuing my reading, what mad is that one? That is a mad muttasil. There is an alif followed by a hamza. However, here's a tricky part. When I'm stopping at the word السماء, now there is another type of mad that has been introduced. It could also be considered a mad عارض للسكون because now there is a alif and then after the alif there is a sukoon which is a temporary sukoon. And typically a mad عارض للسكون can be read as 2 or 4 or 6. So now we've got 2 reasons. We've got a mad muttasil which is read 4 or 5 and a mad عارض للسكون which is 2, 4, 6. Which one do I apply? technically the muttasil is stronger. It's 4 or 5. It will not allow itself to be read as 2. So the muttasil is stronger. Practically what you do in your recitation is you look at the two mads. Which one do I normally read longer? So if I'm reading the muttasil as 4 and the arid al-sukun normally I read it as 2, therefore no, you have to read it with 4. You can't read it with 2. But on the other hand, if I'm reading the arid al-sukun as 6 and the muttasil as 4, 6 is longer than 4, so you read this mad as 6 when you stop. And if I'm reading the muttasil as 4 and the arid al-sukun as 4 as well, then we read this mad with 4 harakat because both lengths are the same. And here we say that both lengths are the same, therefore they both technically apply. Now that might have gotten a little bit complicated. However, let's oversimplify it. And if you forgot all the rules and the poem and everything like that, let me think of a practical way. And this is the takeaway. If there is a letter of mad and there is more than one reason for that mad, so different mads could apply here, I'll just look at my normal reading and these mads individually in my reading. Individually, which one do I normally read longer? Is it this one or that one? Whichever one is longer, I'll apply that length to that mad. And that is the simplified approach to the ruling of the stronger of the two causes of mad. Here's a very interesting one. If I stopped at ri'a, how many types of mad are there? Let's analyze it. First, there is a hamza followed by a harf mad. That is a mad badal. That's 2. Now second, there is an alif followed by a hamza. And that is a mad in the same word. That is a mad muttasil. So that's 4 or 5. And when I'm stopping, now there is a sukun. So there is a mad arid al-sukun. There is a letter of mad followed by a letter which is sakin temporarily, and that is a mad arid al-sukun. That's 2 or 4 or 6. So there are 3 different reasons that have come in this mad. Out of the 3 types of mad, the weakest is badal, the 2 harakat, and that drops away. And what is left is a muttasil, which is 4 or 5 harakat, and the arid al-sukun, which is 2, 4 or 6 harakat. And we've spoken about that one in detail. It's whichever you read normally longer. Now let's revisit those learning objectives. Number 1, we said we wanted to analyze that there might be more than one reason of mad for a letter of mad, and we have gone through that in detail. And the second objective was to analyze the different types of mad that can come and assess which one should apply. And the answer to that, we look at the strength of the mad, which is stronger, or a simpler method to think about it, which do I normally read longer? That's the length that I will read. And do remember that all these mads have separate videos, so please look at the playlist to see them individually, and I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.